Welcome to the Establish the Run Rookie Mock Draft. I am Mike Leone. I'm here with Evan Silva and Anthony Amico, the man behind our Dynasty rankings, to do this one-round rookie mock draft. Format will be Superflex, tight end premium scoring, which it's just a little bit more dynamic. Let's just talk about the quarterbacks and tight ends a bit more, but how we rank the players and our evals are going to apply to any format you might play in. And we're going to kick this thing off right away, not waste any time. Throw it over to our man, Evan Silva, for the 101.
Yeah, I just want to let you guys know before we start this, I've done zero prep. I've been doing AFC, NFC draft grades for the last, oh God, I don't even know how many hours. I need a friggin' nap. But I did do like a preliminary little ranking, but I didn't do Superflex tight end premium. So
great sales pitch with the I've done zero.
So don't listen to anything when I say, and if I say something stupid, Amico and Leone, spreadsheet socialists, just don't be afraid to correct me, okay? But obviously, I think we're all starting off with Bijan Robinson. He goes to Atlanta. They're going to run the crap out of the ball. He's really good in the receiving game. They took him number 8 overall. That draft capital is just insane for a running back these days. We knew that he was an awesome player coming in. It was just a matter of where he landed. I think he landed in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, Amico, we'll throw it to you to the 102. I don't have anything to add because I'm 100% in alignment with Silva, with Bijan as the 101. But I know you're a little bit contrarian here with the Superflex drafts, with like how much value the quarterback can carry. So who's your pick at 102? And would you take your pick at 102 ahead of Bijan at 101?
Yeah, I'm going with Anthony Richardson, and I would take him first, I think, in these Superflex drafts. I know that that's a contrarian take, but I just think that the value of these quarterbacks is so high. Like I'm redoing our ranks right now. Like I think that his value, like we had him and Bijan very, very close in the pre-draft stuff. But now I'm looking at this situation and I'm like, well, he's in the nut spot. Like he's in a dome. Shane Steichen, extremely sharp, obviously just coaxed an MVP caliber season out of Jalen Hurts. They have some interesting weapons. I know it's not maybe like a bunch of names per se, but Jelani Woods, Michael Pittman. They drafted Josh Downs. They have Alec Pierce. Like obviously they have Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. Like, and he's the most athletic quarterback of all time. So like I'm looking at the ceiling here for Anthony Richardson, and I'm like, okay, well, if he becomes a Jalen Hurts X-esque value, we're talking about like a top 6 pick in Superflex. And like, I just don't really see a scenario where Bijan is getting there. So I prefer Richardson. I definitely think that he's going to be a more common pick at 2 in these drafts, but I think it's a smash. Like, I think if you want to tier him and Bijan and say that's a clear top 2, I'm fine with that.
Yeah. I think in your actual drafts, you can probably trade out of the 101 to the 102 for like even something small, if that's really how you feel.
Yeah.
Also, I think like trade value to me matters a lot. And, we play in some of these sharper leagues where people are a little bit more tentative with running backs, in which case I can see going to Anthony Richardson. But the vast majority of leagues out there, like everyone's drilling over Bijan. I think he's going to smash, like Evan said, year 1, which just gives you so much safety in the trade value, even though it's a running back, where you might just be able to move him for a boatload down the line, even if, you do have some of that positional adjustment. So I think those are good arguments for Richardson. I'd still probably go Bijan and capitulate to the market a little bit. I will at 103 go quarterback as well. I'll go with Bryce Young. And I think I would definitely take Richardson over Young because the upside in terms of how they're going to perform from a fantasy perspective definitely tilts in favor of Richardson with his rushing ability. But, first overall pick, really, really good prospect. I know there's some concerns over his size, and I also I feel better about Carolina's situation moving forward under Frank Reich than I do the situation in Houston for CJ Stroud. So I'll take Bryce Young at the 103. I think that's kind of a clear-cut distinction between him and Stroud for me.
So I guess I'm going to go with Jahmyr Gibbs here then at number 4. It would come down to him and CJ Stroud in a Superflex. And I think that CJ Stroud is a legitimate consideration. But I think that Jahmyr Gibbs, with his pass-catching acumen, his game is very similar to Alvin Kamara. The draft capital that the Lions invested in him at number 12 overall, which was, I would say, shocking, but speaks to their level of confidence in him taking over as I think their clear-cut lead back. They traded away DeAndre Swift, a couple of days after they made that move to go get Jahmyr Gibbs. David Montgomery is a concern, but I think that Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be the lead back, catch a bunch of passes. Jared Goff is good at dumping the ball off to RBs. And I think that Jahmyr Gibbs, just based on how much they invested in him, is going to be a centerpiece of this offense, which we saw last year, what could be very explosive at times and has a chance to be even more explosive now with Gibbs, Jamison Williams, getting further into the tenure of Ben Johnson, who I think is one of the best OCs in the league.
How are you kind of like envisioning this split going on, Evan? Because I think it's a really weird scenario where like they paid like legitimate money to a running back and then they draft Gibbs at 12. So how do you kind of see that breaking down?
Well, I mean, we've seen what David Montgomery can do, and he's a reliable back that I think that he can pass protect. He does the little things that coaches like, and I mean he's going to be on the field, so that is a concern. But I think that Jahmyr Gibbs, based on what they paid for him, based on his explosiveness, he's so much more explosive than David Montgomery, who gets caught from behind all the time when he gets out in the open field. That explosiveness, playing in the dome in Ford Field, Jahmyr Gibbs is a really, really exciting player in Detroit.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting the combo of them because, like, for redraft, in some ways, David Montgomery is exciting because if you think of the Jamal Williams role, plus David Montgomery could give you something in the pass game, whereas Jamal Williams gave you no receiving stats for fantasy. And then the idea behind Gibbs is kind of like, well, if we get Gibbs in the Swift role, but they actually like him and give him even more, it's huge. So it's an interesting conversation for redraft. But yeah, for Dynasty, I don't think you're really worried about Montgomery. Just such absurd draft capital kind of alleviates those concerns and the size concerns. At least that's how I'm seeing it. Amico, what are you doing at 105?
Yeah, I mean, I have to take Stroud here. I think it's kind of a no-brainer in this spot. He's an interesting prospect, I think, because I mean, pre-S2 stuff, I feel like Stroud was like the cleanest guy in the sense that like you weren't really worried about any size stuff like you were with Bryce. He obviously had amazing stats. You knew he was going to go high in the draft. All those things obviously happened. And like, I feel like we had such negative press on Stroud where like, you almost feel weird. Like you almost feel guilty taking him now in these drafts, but like you shouldn't. Like he
went number 2 overall.
Right. Like the draft capital's there. We saw some glimpses of rushing potential that last game against Georgia. If he harnesses that at all, I mean, it doesn't have to be obviously at the level of like an Anthony Richardson, but if we're getting like Trevor Lawrence level rushing, I mean, that really boosts, I think, the floor here for what we can expect week to week from Stroud. And I think really the only concern is right now that they really lack a go-to stud weapon. Robert Woods, Nico Collins, they have like a bunch of guys, but no star yet. But I think we feel pretty good about Stroud overall as a prospect.
Would you take him over Gibbs?
I think it's a tier. I think it really depends on your team.
Yeah. I think it's a tier as well.
Because I don't see Stroud as like a difference maker necessarily, right? Like if he's just like if he ends up not really running and he's just like a pocket passer, he's not separating you a ton at quarterback, whereas Gibbs could potentially be that guy at running back for you.
Yeah, I think it's the same tier. I will go with the next guy who I think sort of in a tier by himself, maybe third in this tier, but I'll go with Jackson Smith and Jigba, who I feel like people are overly panicking about the landing spot. I mean, I know the draft capital at 20th wasn't like as strong as we thought it might be. Like we thought he could go like in the early double digits, but it's still first wide receiver off the board. First round draft capital was, our favorite prospect of the wide receivers heading into the draft. I'm not worried about the landing spot long term. I get concerns from a redraft perspective, but Tyler Lockett's into his 30s. Metcalf and JSN are going to do different things. It's not crazy to think that in a year or two, JSN's out targeting Metcalf just by the way that he wins, and they both are able to play, be very successful there for Seattle. So I'm going to go JSN at 106.
So this is where I think it gets pretty interesting after these guys. And
it's wide open.
I think I'm gonna go a little nuts here. and I'm gonna go with Rashee Rice out of SMU.
Ooh, baby, that is
Spicy.
yeah, that's spicy.
It's spicy.
That's the thumbnail. We've got it.
It's spicy. Yeah. And I just finished my AFC draft grades and submitted them, and they should be up here very shortly. Rashee Rice was extremely productive at SMU last year, and Kevin Cole of PFF, or maybe I guess formerly of PFF, now of like Substack or something, has pointed out that the most predictive has pointed out that the most predictive metric on wide receivers is college production. And Rashee Rice was just outrageous, especially this past season. He's a little bit old. He's 23, but he's not too old. And his workout metrics were really good. He only ran 4.51, but his 10-yard split was like 1.49, 41-inch vertical. The Chiefs traded up for him, and he gets paired with Patrick Mahomes in a wide receiver core that otherwise is just not very impressive. I mean, we're talking about MVS, who's a clear-cut, established role player in the league. Sky Moore, who was a disappointment as a rookie. McCole Hardman is gone. Juju Smith-Schuster is gone. Travis Kelce is about to turn 35 or something. So I don't know. I'm getting nuts here. I'm going with Rashee Rice at SMU.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can make an argument. Sorry, Leone.
I was going to say, I'll push back a little bit here, Silva. I mean, I love the spiciness of the take. I feel like we've had a couple Chiefs wide receivers over the last few years who were overdrafted by the team. And we've been like, well, the landing spot is great. And, Rice is a 4-year guy. His production was solid, but, JJ Zachariason and his late round prospect guide kind of noted he only hit 2.00 yards per team of pass attempt just once, which is kind of the benchmark that they use. And I don't know. I think we're overvaluing landing spot here in Dynasty when I'm just a little bit more concerned with the player. But if you do like Rice, I think you could wait. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see where his ADP is. Miko, you probably have a better feel on where people might actually take Rice.
Well, yeah, I mean, like I'm kind of looking at the board, and I can see where we get to Rice in the sense that like a lot of these receivers didn't necessarily end up in like super appealing locations. And I know we'll talk about some of them, like Flowers, Addison. Like there is like some chance that Rice, as kind of like the only big receiver that the Chiefs have, ends up having like some kind of big role right away. Like it really wouldn't surprise me. We know that Mahomes campaigned basically for them to draft this guy. It's too early for me, but like this is the range where I feel like people are going to start getting to the guys that they want versus like the top 5, the top 6 guys that we took. I felt like those are the top 5.
Yeah, agreed.
I'm going to go Dalton Kincaid here. I'm super into Kincaid. I think that this was a great pick by Buffalo. They traded up to get him. The comparison that you heard a lot in the pre-draft process was like, we don't want to say it, but he looks a lot like Travis Kelce. Like super athletic, super productive catching the ball. He had like 14, 15 catches against USC. Like that was kind of the game. I feel like that put him on the map. And Buffalo, like super quietly, doesn't have
anyone to throw to.
Yeah, like I felt like towards down the stretch last year, it was like, all right, we have Diggs, Gabe Davis hurt, maybe not that good, we're not sure. And then they had like all this rotating like slot trio of like Cole Beasley, Khalil Shakir, Isaiah McKenzie. Well, now all those targets might just go to Dalton Kincaid, who's bigger and very good, and could have a big red zone role with this team as well. And I think that the ceiling here is really high. Tight end overall in Dynasty is not like a super good position. It's a very good position in this draft. But like in terms of what we've gotten fantasy-wise, like last year, disaster. So there's a potential here for Kincaid to be a pretty big value in like the larger scheme of fantasy football.
I put in my draft grades that I think that Dalton Kincaid actually might just immediately slot in as the Bills' slot receiver between Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs. And like that'll be his role like right off the bat. And Dawson Knox will be that, classic inline wide tight end. And Dalton Kincaid will be their actual slot receiver.
I love that.
Yeah, Silva, I need you to yell at Jack and Mark, who are working on our seasonal redraft rankings, and they're a little bit scared of the historical rookie tight end stuff, but I don't know how applicable it is here because of what you said. And I'm 100% Homer hat on Bills fan, but this is a team trying to win the Super Bowl. They didn't trade up in the first round for like a Devy tight end. Like they traded up because this is the wide receiver that they wanted to get, and he's just happens to be a big ass tight end, and on paper. So I like the pick Amico. I think I'm between two wide receivers at my pick at 109. I think I'd have them both ahead of Kincaid, but again, keep in mind, tight end premium scoring means that in a full PPR league, tight ends are getting 1.5 points per reception. So if you run into the right one, it's an absolute game changer because there's not a lot that make a huge difference, but the ones that do make quite a meaningful difference. But I'm between Quentin Johnston and Addison here, and I'm going to go with Johnston. I'm just a little bit of a sucker for like these risk reward bets, and I gave Silva some pushback for overvaluing landing spot, and I'm probably going to overvalue landing spot here, but we got really good draft capital for him, and I'm just excited with like what the Chargers are going to do. They've been pretty pass heavy, up tempo team. Now they bring in Kellen Moore, and if you just look at the receiving options, you've got an aging Keenan Allen. Mike Williams is, he's been in the league for a while now, and he's not always in the lineup consistently. Josh Palmer, I think, has pretty much proven that like he's just a guy, not really someone that's going to block Johnston from getting his snap share if Johnston is legitimately good. So I'm going to take the gamble here, whereas I think Addison's a lot safer, but I'm going to roll the dice on the upside for Johnston.
I love that. I mean, I'm high on Johnston. I think I was like wavering on him in the pre-draft process, but like they needed a big guy, and he's athletic. Like he's kind of exactly what they need. Palmer can replace Keenan Allen if he leaves in the slot. Like that's fine. But like the guy that could be like an alpha here in like 2 years with Justin Herbert is Johnston. That's the swing I think you want in this class.
I'm with you. Yeah, and I was hoping that you would let him fall to me, but now I don't even know what to do. I don't think I'd take Jordan Addison here. I just don't think that the ceiling is high enough on Jordan Addison.
Yeah, it's not a huge ceiling, but it's like he's a pretty good prospect, very good draft capital.
Yeah.
I think it's like a pretty safe offense. And
I think he's Jahan Dotson. And, that's okay, but like he's like a clear-cut number 2 long-term. I mean, Justin Jefferson ain't going anywhere, so you're locking yourself into like a beta number 2.
Yeah, you're hoping it's like what, like T. Higgins, like to Chase is kind of like what your hope is long term, which obviously that's the Super Bowl case. Again, and that's why I took Johnston ahead of him. But there's
a
pick that's just waiting to be made by you, Evan, right here.
I know,
but I'm dying to
do it. I'm dying to do it,
for you.
But I think that this guy would he might fall to me. So with my next pick, do I have a next pick?
You don't. This is the 110. But you could we'll give you the 201. Okay, we're nice. Okay, we'll give you we'll end the show at the 201.
I think I have to take Zay Flowers. I think because Odell Beckham is a short-term guy. Rashad Bateman hasn't been able to stay healthy since college. Zay Flowers, the draft capital was really, really strong there. I think he's a baller. Did you see him when he came out after he got selected? Like he was dripping. I mean, this dude was
absolutely.
Yeah, he was dripping like hard. So I think I'm going to go with Zay Flowers, trusting the Todd Monken. Lamar Jackson, I think, is he's a dual threat, but he's not a running back like all the idiots say. And Zay Flowers is really good. So I'm going to go with Zay Flowers. I think that's the best pick right now for me.
I'm like wondering if, I think this offense could be super fun.
It's going to be fun to see how it plays out. Like Monken's going to throw way more than people expect.
Right. And there's so many opportunities for them to just empty the backfield. They have receivers now. They obviously have tight ends that they can throw in there and just let Lamar cut loose, man. I think this could be fun. I'm pretty excited.
I was buying the uncertainty dip on Lamar. I made some big trades a few weeks ago for Lamar Jackson in my Dynasty leagues. And I'm psyched right now with, bringing in Flowers, bringing in Monken, then he signs the extension. So I think he's probably in that same tier. I was probably shortchanging him by just saying Johnston or Addison. I think Flowers is right there. I'm a Bateman slappy. I just can't, so I'm just holding on to hope there.
Oh, dude, I'm like once a week I'm getting tagged in the Discord. Like, Amico, you have Bateman too high. I'm just like, I like him, I don't know. I'm going to go Will Levis. I mean, I'm a sucker for the quarterbacks. Like, I'm just going to keep firing them. And I know that, like, typically these, like, day 2 quarterbacks are not super enticing. But I feel like Levis is rare for 2 reasons. Like, number one, it was very clear that teams were trying to get up into the first round to draft him. That was all the reports. It seemed like honestly, if Kansas City wasn't hosting the draft, that they would have moved back with one of these teams instead of making their selection at 31. I know they spoke with the Bills. The Bills really wanted Kincaid. Like, the teams were trying to get up. It's the case in like day 2 that a lot of times the quarterbacks, once they slip out of day 1, they don't go. Like, we saw this last year. They just slide and slide and slide because if a team wanted them, they would have moved up into day 1. Since 2011, we've only had 5 other quarterbacks go in the first 10 picks of day 2. Andy Dalton, Colin Kaepernick, Geno Smith, Derek Carr, Drew Lock. All these guys pretty much got the chance to start. Lock, I would say, had like the worst overall outcome, but like Dalton, Carr, Geno, like these guys all pretty much started right away. And I think that we're going to have the chance to see that with Levis. We'll see what happens to Tannehill in the preseason. I could definitely see them dealing him now and just trying to like kickstart this like mini rebuild that I feel like they were doing under Rand Carthon. And Levis is someone who like much maligned in the pre-draft process. Maybe he's not good. I know he's graded day 2 by like Lance. And,
who would make a ton of sense for the Titans to trade Ryan Tannehill to would
Falcons,
be
baby.
Arthur Smith and the Falcons.
Yeah.
Ton of sense.
It would be amazing. But the thing that you're buying with Levis, I think, is that he does run a little bit. So even if he isn't a star, even if he isn't even very good, there's kind of a chance here that you still get some salvageable fantasy value for as long as he's starting.
Yeah, I thought Levis was going to follow me at the 112, and I would have definitely taken him there. So I like the pick. 2 years in a row doing this, though, you guys just give me an absolute steal. Last year you let Kenneth Walker fall to me. Begrudgingly I took him. This year I'm going to excitedly take Jordan Addison at 112. I don't think he's going to last this late in very many rookie drafts, even in Superflex tight end premium. But I get the concerns where the ceiling looks like it's capped because Justin Jefferson's the best wide receiver in the NFL and in his prime, again, for several more years, handful more years. But Addison can play inside in the slot. I think this is a team that they showed last year they're going to throw more than they did in the past. They've got pretty safe quarterback play. They definitely have the available targets at wide receiver. He won the Blitnikoff Award. He was kind of in the conversation for like number 1 wide receiver off the board. I think we took him at like some longer odds to be so. So ultimately, I think things turned out pretty well for him in the draft. Honestly, I know it's not like a huge ceiling spot because he's blocked, but other than that, it just seems really safe for him to immediately produce and be a consistent producer for several years.
Do you give any thought in these rookie drafts to like the long-term sustainability of the quarterback? Because I think the thing that I think about with Minnesota is like, if Cousins isn't their guy, like who's their quarterback in like 2 years or whatever?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. And
I'm not saying that I would ding him for that, by the way. I'm just curious kind of your thought process.
I think it's a good question. I do think about it a little bit, but I kind of, when we're at this point, especially like, I guess I could see that as a tiebreaker between like him and let's say Flowers, where Flowers, you got Lamar on extension. Maybe you just go with the safer quarterback play, but you've also got a team in Minnesota that's more likely to have, a pure pocket passer, which is going to result in more pass attempts for the team, like more volume. Like we think Baltimore is going to throw more, but like throwing more, like that's relative to what they've done in the past. So I just think the volume in pass attempts probably going to stay pretty good. And there's some concern long-term, but I like the skill of the player too. That's why I think it's important to not take the player solely on landing spot. You got to take into account the skill of the player. And he has really strong draft capital. And heading into the draft, he was in the conversation for top wide receiver prospects. So, he checks those boxes for me, which alleviates some of the QB concerns.
And for 201, I mean, did you guys see Levitan's
Laporta.
post comparing Michael Mayer to Austin Hooper.
Oh, I thought you were going to go.
I did see that.
I'm going to light him up for that tomorrow. We're doing a podcast tomorrow. We're on the AFC and NFC draft grades. Like, he is not going to hear the end of this. So, stay tuned. Like, it might get a little mean.
All right, so that's a 201. It's Michael Mayer.
I don't know. Is it? I don't. What do you guys think?
Dude, I'm with this.
I think that's. I was just curious what you guys thought. I think talking tight end premium, only Kincaid goes for us in round 1, which is how it's probably going to be in most drafts. But I think Mayer and Laporta are like very interesting guys too.
Well, I really like both players. Obviously, I have a little bit of a bias toward Mayer, but I think Laporta landed an awesome spot too. And I really liked Laporta before the whole thing. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's kind of up for grabs, but I would lean Mayer, but very slightly.
Yeah, I mean, in the pre-draft process, I did this article about like the draft capital and why sometimes we need to kind of default back to like the consensus big board. Mayer was 14th on the consensus big board versus Laporta, who was, way lower. He was 54th. So I think like,
especially when it's the Lions, where we saw what they did with Gibbs, it's like they're probably off from the big board.
Yeah. But like, I just think that Mayer, like for whatever reason, like he fell during this process, but he is like, he's talented. He's super talented. He can fall right into this position with the Raiders where like they need a tight end. Like the targets can be there. I'm really excited, I think, about where he ended up.
Yeah, I think the Raiders in general, some of the ADPs and redraft have been, I think people like Jimmy G's fine. Like people are acting like he's absolute dog shit. And I mean, like he's fine. So I like that. So before we get out of here, we only had 2 running backs early go. I think at the top of round 2, you're looking at a couple other running backs. One, like we say not to overrate landing spot for running back, though. You had a good tweet about this, Amico. I think it matters a little bit more because we really are looking at immediate production. Like this position that doesn't have a long shelf life, whether it's due to health or just the replaceability in terms of volume, like a coach doesn't like you, like DeAndre Swift, and you can go away. So Charbonnet going to Seattle was bad. I mean, with Walker there, I don't think there's any way around that. He has the pass catching chops, and Walker was really inconsistent. Like even in the run game, made some big plays, but really inconsistent. So maybe long term there's some hope there, but that was bad to me. Flip side, Devon, I'm going to say this wrong. How do I say his last name?
Devon A-Chain. Yeah.
Devon A-Chain. Oh, I said it. Devon A-Chain. My apologies.
That's the dude right here. That's RB3.
That was the complete 180 to Charbonnet, where it's like the optimal landing spot in Miami, where he doesn't have to touch the ball a ton, can be a game breaker, and he's got like some vets in front of him, Mostert, who's injury prone. So Silva, why don't you talk to us about A-Chain?
Well, that the Dane Brugler comp to Javid Best, just that gets me to a full 4.7.
Yes, sir.
A-Chain. I mean that's sick. I mean, McDaniel knows how to get the ball in the hands of playmakers with speed, and that's what A-Chain brings to the table. I saw Greg Cosell breaking him down. Thinks that he can be more than just a scat back, more than just a satellite back. I mean, he's really, really exciting in that landing spot. To me, he's RB3 in Dynasty.
Yeah, the thing that I think stood out to me, and I'm kind of quoting the scouts here. This is not like my own observation, but like for a small guy, A-Chain runs like a big guy. Like he can still do big guy stuff, even though he's in a smaller body. And the statistical comp that really shined through, I think, in the data was Darren Sproles. And A-Chain is like almost like a supercharged version of that. And if he can get that kind of receiving role in this offense, oh baby.
RB3 for you as well, Amico?
Not even close, like by far.
Okay. All right, awesome. Well, that's going to do it for us. Make sure you're tuning in to Establish the Run. You're watching this on the YouTube channel. Give us a thumbs up, subscribe to us, and also make sure you subscribe to the ETR draft kit when it launches and get yourself access to Amico's Dynasty rankings that are going to be up. He's going to have a revamp of the rankings early this week, taking into account all the draft stuff, get you ready for your rookie draft. Silva's got his AFC, NFC draft grades up on Establish the Run. And I will, at one point this week, do a little bit of content on my plan for rookie drafts. And if you want to look at where we have these rookies ranked in best ball, Underdog's got their huge contest going on, and we already have Best Ball Mania 4 ranks up for that. Appreciate everybody listening. Best of luck this season.